Well, guys, UFC 314 just wrapped up, and I wanted to give my thoughts on this card overall because this was the first card that I was actually looking forward to in a while. I haven't seen a really good fight card in a long time because I mentioned previously that the UFC's kind of gotten a little bit stale lately. Ever since UFC 300, it's just been a bit stale for about the past year. It's just been hard to be a really, solid MMA fan all around. But I wanted to go through this card here because this card was actually pretty good. The main card in particular, I wanted to start off with the main event. I'm going to work my way down. Alexander Volkanovski defeats Diego Lopez by way of decision. But the thing is with this fight, guys, is that I very much understood is that Alexander Volkanovski was the more technical fighter. I very much understood that. He was better than Diego Lopez, right? Specifically in the striking and in the wrestling. The jiu-jitsu would be where it would get a bit murky, but I didn't think that Diego Lopez would be able to submit Volkanovski anyway, just because Volkanovski's been on the ground with the likes of Islam Makhachev and Brian Ortega. Those two guys alone are just as good, if not better on the ground than someone like Diego Lopez. So I was very, very confident that on the ground, I don't think anything super bad would happen to Volkanovski. He wouldn't have gotten submitted. And on the feet, it was just a masterclass. I mean, Volkanovski was constantly offsetting Diego Lopez. He was constantly throwing the jab or throwing the low kick, or he was throwing something constantly. And what this does is it basically gets Diego Lopez off his rhythm. He's not able to really throw his combinations the way he'd like to throw. And you remember in my prediction video how I said that Diego Lopez is kind of a bit of a spazzy guy. He kind of tends to spaz out in certain exchanges. But he is also more naturally a counter striker, and you saw that in this fight. It kind of seemed like that Diego Lopez was kind of waiting for an opening. He kind of spent the entire fight almost waiting for something to happen. And to be fair, he did get a knockdown. And if you're curious about my score in this fight, I had it 48-47 Alexander Volkanovski. And the judging, it was pretty straightforward. Volkanovski won rounds 1, 3, and 5. And Diego Lopez won rounds 2 and 4. And I want to get into the judging thing here in a minute. But just speaking on the actual fight, Diego Lopez, I believe, would have served him well in that 5th round if Diego Lopez had thrown more. But it seemed like he was so intent on just, banging his gloves, egging Volkanovski on to fight him, and then not throw anything. That seemed to be the gist of that 5th round overall. But I did think it was a pretty good fight. But, the judging is kind of something I want to speak on here a little bit, because Joe Rogan and DC were kind of talking as if that Alexander Volkanovski won the 2nd round. That's what they were saying. And I don't know what fight they were watching. Yes, Volkanovski outstruck Diego Lopez in round 2. But that doesn't matter when, first of all, you get knocked down, right? I understand that this isn't boxing, but if we were in boxing, that would be a 10-8 round by default, right? So imagine you get dropped, right? That's the biggest thing that happened in the round. If you literally look at the judging criteria, it is based off of damage. Damage is the number one criteria. Like, I saw a tweet where someone had said that, even though Diego Lopez dropped Volkanovski won the round because he landed the bigger shots. That doesn't make any sort of sense. Because if Volkanovski landed the bigger shots, he would have hurt Diego Lopez. But he didn't. Diego dropped Volkanovski and won the 2nd round because of it. But regardless, it doesn't really matter. Volkanovski proved to be the more technical fighter, which I knew was the case going into it. I knew he was the more technical fighter. It was just a matter of, can Diego Lopez put down Volkanovski and knock him out? Which, I'll be honest with you guys, he kind of ruined my parlay a little bit, because I had Yair Rodriguez beating Pitbull by decision. I had Petty Pimblett beating Michael Chandler by TKO. I had the opportunity to cash out, and I didn't cash out. I thought Diego Lopez is going to catch him with something at some point, because Volkanovski's 36 years old. He doesn't have that great of a chin, never has. And Diego Lopez is a power puncher. Like, he's going to land one shot, right? But he did land the shot. He just wasn't able to finish him. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Alexander Volkanovski is the new featherweight champion of the world. And to be honest with you, this kind of waters down the division a little bit, because Alexander Volkanovski is a fantastic fighter. But he got knocked out by Ilia Topuria, who relinquished the belt to let Volkanovski basically resume being the featherweight champion. You see how that could make the overall featherweight division look bad. It kind of makes it look weak now, because who does Volkanovski fight now? If you want to know my opinion on his next fight, I think that he should fight Movsar Evloev, because the fact that he did beat Diego Lopez, right? So I think that there is a storyline there. But I also just think that there's not really a whole lot of top contenders in the featherweight division. Max has moved up to 155, and he couldn't fight Volkanovski for a fourth time, right? He just beat Diego, and he already beat Yair Rodriguez. He beat Brian Ortega. Arnold Allen does not deserve a title shot right now. So it has to be Movsar. If it's not Movsar, then he's just going to be sitting out waiting. So I think he needs to fight Movsar Evloev, get that fight out of the way. And if you want to know my opinion, I think Alexander Volkanovski wins. If Islam wasn't able to submit Alexander Volkanovski, if Brian Ortega was not able to submit Alexander Volkanovski, then Movsar Evloev's not going to do anything. And Movsar's only ever gone to decisions, and he's just going to constantly shoot. But I think that Volkanovski's going to stop the takedowns and outstrike him and probably knock him out in the third or fourth round. But moving on to the co-main event, Paddy Pimblett TKOs Michael Chandler in the third round. And this fight was extremely interesting because stylistically, Michael Chandler should be able to beat someone of the likes of Paddy Pimblett, right? I mean, this is the guy who struggled against Jared Gordon, who should have lost to him. You know, is beating guys like the likes of Jordan Levitt. He just beat Bobby Green. He just hasn't really proven himself. But he fought Michael Chandler, who... Michael Chandler's kind of like the gatekeeper of the division. Like, if you can get past Michael Chandler, then you're moving on to very, very tough fights. Like, there is no easy fights. And Michael Chandler's never an easy fight, just because even though he doesn't have the best chin necessarily, he's very, very tough. It's very hard to beat this guy. This guy just wants to win so badly. But this fight was interesting, right? Because, like I said, stylistically, Michael Chandler should be able to beat someone like Paddy Pimblett. But something that Michael Chandler's been doing in his last couple fights, and I think it's an energy preservation thing, that Michael Chandler's been trying so hard to preserve his stamina and trying to keep himself going into the later rounds to the point where he ends up not really throwing anything at all and kind of just plays defense for the most part. And that's kind of what I've been noticing here out of Michael Chandler. And he's very, very capable, but at this stage of his career, there's just not a whole lot of directions that you can really put him in. You know, the commentators were absolutely glazing Paddy Pimblett, which is just ridiculous. He beat Michael Chandler, right? Michael Chandler is a good fighter, but Michael Chandler's not the top-esque of the lightweight division. You know what I mean? Like, he's not that guy. Like, if he fights anybody in the top 5, he's gonna lose to every single one of them. Like, Michael Chandler's just not on that level. So for Paddy Pimblett, you know, Michael Chandler, it's a decent win, but it's not an elite level win. You know, I really want to see him go against the likes of, you know, Mateusz Gamrot, Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira, Arman Tsarukyan. He doesn't want to fight Arman. He called him a helmet, which, if you ask me, is kind of a crazy name to be calling anybody. But if you take a look at the current lightweight rankings, he could fight someone like Dan Hooker. He called out Justin Gaethje, which stylistically is a good fight for Paddy. If Paddy gets the fight to the ground, he's choking out Justin. That's it. That's all he has to do, is take his back. He doesn't even have to take him down. He can just clinch him, take his back, and choke him out. It's going to be very, very easy for Paddy to win that kind of fight. Because I don't see Justin Gaethje knocking Paddy out. Paddy's proven to have a very, very good chin. Not the best defense in the world, but he does have a very good chin. And, you know, I know I've been quite harsh on Paddy. In the past, I have been very harsh on the guy. I think he's overrated. And I'm just not a very big fan of the guy. I'm a bit of a hater, right? I am a bit of a Paddy Pimblett hater. But what I will say is he's an extremely awkward striker, right? He does strike from very awkward angles. He's a much better kicker than he is a puncher. You know, he proves every time he punches, he kind of just keeps his chin straight up in the air. But he is a very, very good kicker from very, very awkward angles. But who would I like to see Paddy Pimblett fight next? He called out Justin Gaethje. I don't think he should be fighting Justin Gaethje. Well, he's going to get the number 7 ranked spot. I mean, I guess he could fight Justin Gaethje, but how about him versus Mateusz Gamrot? I think that would be a very, very solid grappling match overall. If not him, then maybe like Dan Hooker or something like that. I mean, I don't want to see him fight Justin Gaethje. I just don't care about that fight much, to be honest with you. As for Michael Chandler, I mean, he's probably going to get down to like the number 10 spot. He could fight Rafael Fiziev, but I think Fiziev's moving down to the featherweight division. So maybe like a Benoit Saint Denis or something. But if he's not going to fight like someone like Benoit, like he's got to fight someone in the lower-esque of the top 10 of the lightweight division. If not, then I think he should retire. Michael Chandler, even though he's 2-5 in the UFC, has fought very, very strong competition overall. Well, he's 38 years old now. I just don't think he needs to keep fighting really anymore. I think he's not going to win a title. Like, there isn't really much left for him to do. I honestly think that retirement is something Michael Chandler should seriously consider. Moving on to Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. This fight wasn't really a whole lot to say about this fight. Yair Rodriguez pretty much did what he had to do to win this fight, which is essentially just staying from distance, kind of poking at Patricio Pitbull. He was able to drop him in that third round with that 1-2. Very, very nice combination. Pitbull just kind of seemed like he just wasn't able to get going. I think he was having a hard time with the movement and the range of someone like Yair Rodriguez, who Yair is extremely crafty and extremely difficult. And if you can't take that guy down to the ground, then you're in for a long, long night. But Patricio Pitbull proved that he's just not quite on that caliber necessarily, right? He's not a bad fighter at all, but I just don't think that he's going to be the top echelon of this division. But to be fair, Yair Rodriguez is also just stylistically one of the harder matchups for him. I believe that if he fights some other guys in the division, that he can do extremely well. Like, I think if he fought Diego Lopez or if he fought Brian Ortega, he can do very, very well against these guys. So, if you want to know what I think that Patricio should probably fight Brian Ortega next if he's going to fight. If he's going to fight someone who's kind of on a loss as well, or if the UFC really wants to match him up with somebody, they could put him up against Lerone Murphy or something like that if they want to like have him rise up a little bit more. But honestly, I just don't see Pitbull getting too far. He's a little bit too old at this point, unfortunately. The UFC waited a little bit too long to scoop him up, in my opinion, if you ask me. But if you ask what's next for Yair Rodriguez, let's do him versus Diego Lopez. I mean, they both fought tonight. Neither one of them really got injured inside the fight. And they were having some beef at the press conference about the whole Mexican thing, which is kind of funny if you ask me. So, yeah, let's run that fight. I think that should be very interesting. I think for both these guys, they're like 2 wins away from a title shot, especially Diego Lopez because he just fought for the belt. So 2 more wins for Diego, and he should get a title shot. Yair already fought Volkanovski. So, yeah, I think 2 more wins for each of these guys, and they should be able to get a title shot. So the winner of this fight should be fighting for a title eliminator, I guess you could say. But the problem is that there's just not a lot of clear contenders in the featherweight division because Ilya's gone. He's not going to fight Max, and Max has moved up as well. There's Movsar, who he hasn't fought yet. He just fought Diego. He's already fought Yair. He's already fought Brian Ortega. Arnold Allen's not in the picture, which I don't know what's going on with Arnold Allen, by the way. But I would like to see that Yair Rodriguez, Diego Lopez fight, and then whoever wins that fight can fight someone for the number 1 contender spot. That works for me. Now, man, we got to talk about that Gene Silva performance, man. This guy was on that timing, bro. He was literally toying with Bryce Mitchell the entire fight. He was just toying with him, talking to him, taunting him in some sort of capacity. Now, to be fair, Bryce Mitchell did start off very, very well. He was doing a very good job with the kicks in particular. The side kick to the knee, side kick to the body. Those calf kicks were doing very, very well for him. And he was actually forming a welt on Gene Silva's leg, but Gene Silva was just the overall better fighter. It was very, very obvious, right? It was a tough watch for me because I'm actually someone who's a fan of Bryce Mitchell. I actually like him. I think he's a very nice and respectful man. You know, despite all the controversy that he's been through, I think you have to look at the context in some of those situations, which when he talked about the mustache filler, he was talking about before the atrocities that Hitler was not a bad person. I don't know too much about the, World War II German Nazi stuff or whatever, but what I do know is that Bryce has got good intentions, and I think he's just a little bit misunderstood. I like Bryce Mitchell a lot, but it's just as a fighter, even if you look outside of the personalities of both of these guys, Gene Silva was just the more technical fighter, right? The fighting nerds are on top right now. It's actually kind of just going crazy. And, for what's next for Gene Silva, he's going to be ranked number 13. This is his first ranked opponent. They're probably going to match him up with someone like a Josh Emmett or maybe like an Aljamain Sterling. Either one of those fights, I'm absolutely on board with watching. Like the fighting nerds are just making their way to the top right now. It's very amazing to see. Bryce Mitchell, I do feel kind of sorry for. Like, he kind of just got clowned on the whole fight. As unfortunate as that is, I mean, I understand that that's just antics at the end of the day, so maybe we shouldn't be reading into it too much, but Gene Silva was pretty much in control the whole time. But to be fair, Bryce was landing those calf kicks, he was landing those body kicks, so, if Gene Silva comes up against someone who's a really good kicker, he better watch out, because he could absolutely have some damage coming his way. But until then, let's have him fight Josh Emmett, someone in the top 10, someone who's been around for a long time. If not him, then like I said, maybe like an Aljamain Sterling or something like that. I could go Brian Ortega because he's kind of like the gatekeeper of the featherweight division at this point, if I'm just going to be honest. But guys, let's talk about Dominic Reyes, Nikita Krylov. This was extremely interesting because Nikita Krylov hasn't fought in a long time, right? I don't even remember the last time I watched Nikita Krylov fight. I think it was over 2 years. I think it was the commentary had said, and so that was kind of interesting. Like no ring rust necessarily, right? 'Cause, I mean, Dominic Cruz doesn't even believe in ring rust, right? Like it's not even real. But I didn't know what to expect from Nikita because it had been so long. Dominic Reyes was on a 2-fight winning streak, but we had to look at who he beat, right? Dustin Jacoby and Anthony Smith. Not the best wins in the world, but it's better than nothing, I guess you could say. And coming back and beating someone like Nikita Krylov inside of half a round is just an amazing accomplishment. But Dominic Reyes was essentially setting up that left hand the entire fight, right? He was backing up. He was kind of allowing Krylov to kind of dictate the engagements until Dominic Reyes landed that first jab. And that stunned Krylov. And it seemed like he just never got back in his rhythm, right? Every time Krylov would blitz in, leave his chin straight up in the air, drop his hands, just looking to land that shot. And Dominic Reyes eventually timed him and landed a huge left hand. And baby, I'm so happy that Dominic Reyes got this win, bro. I've been such a huge fan of him. I still believe to this day that he did beat John Jones. And it seemed like that was something that he had a bit of problem with for the longest time. Like, he just wasn't able to let that, loss go. Even though he shouldn't have lost, it just seemed like he just wasn't able to let it go for some reason. Like, he just couldn't put it past him, and it kind of affected him in the future fights. But if we're looking at this realistically, we're looking at, Dominic Reyes going to be put at the number 8 spot now, somewhere in there, number 9, number 8, something like that. But where does he go from here? Because Khalil Rountree Jr. is fighting Jamal Hill. I mean, he already fought Jan Blachowicz. He could fight Alexander Rakic. That could be potentially interesting. He's not going to fight someone like Carlos Ulberg, I don't think, because Ulberg might be a little bit too high in the rankings, and he's like right there for a title shot. He already fought Yuri. He's not going to fight Alex, and he's definitely not going to fight for the belt right now. So I think Alexander Rakic would probably be the best fight to make right now, if we're going to be honest here. It's another person climbing up the rankings, or you could fight someone like Johnny Walker or something like that. Those two haven't fought each other before. Any one of those fights would be fine. Then you look at someone like Nikita Krylov. Oh man, I don't even know who he should fight. I mean, maybe he should fight Volkan Oezdemir. So I think that could potentially be an interesting fight. Or maybe he should fight Johnny Walker instead. Maybe have Dominic Reyes fight Alexander Rakic. I think that would be the best way to play it out. But guys, this was UFC 314. This was a very, very good card. Probably one of the best cards I've watched in a while. So let me know what you guys thought down in the comments. Who should the winners and losers from UFC 314 be fighting? Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Peace.